our honorable guest is Dr. Saskia Harkema, and she is here with us. And she's a wonderful person, a multifaceted personality. She has a background in sociology and business administration, and also she is doing PhD in social sciences. Well, she is a doctor, so she has done already that. She also has experience in the private and nonprofit sector. The most amazing thing is that next to her work as an academic and as a trainer, she is a human rights defender, which is really, really amazing. This is the most important aspect of our lives, and I think it should become a part of each one of us lives as well. She set up a foundation, Faces of Change, for that purpose, and this is incredible how she's managing all of this all together. And she holds several positions, because this is quite something which needs to be inculcated in one's timetable. That if you're taking care of a lot of jobs, then at one time, then you need to be a person who's really quick, who's really fast in grabbing onto information, doing a lot of things, grabbing onto your timetable, and so on. So she's the international leader of Impact Leaders International. That's just one organization, that global ambassador for Female Wave of Change, and senior expert for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So this, like, wow. But with the wow factor, what comes in is how she is managing all of this. So we're going to ask her this as well today, that how she's managing all of this amazing and all of this so much responsibility that she's dealing with. And she has authored several academic and non-academic books as well. So writing one book is quite a hassle. Talking about so many and several books, wow, that's another wow factor to her personality. It's her passion. Actually, writing is one thing that Dr. Saskia thinks that it is a wonderful thing. It's a passion for her, and it's not just something that she is working upon. It's something that has become a part of her blood, a part of her life. It is her in total. So her most recent book is about her work as a peace builder, and it has been titled as Become a Peace Builder and an Impact Leader. So we're going to talk about her book as well. For people who have just joined us and they don't know what I'm talking about, I am Senior Vice Chairperson, Read Pakistan, also the CEO. What we talk about is literature. What we talk about, generally, is how to build libraries and how to inculcate the reading habit in people. It's amazing how you start from the age of 0 and go up to whatever time God has bestowed upon you, and you can work your way out. But you have to be reading. You have to be an avid reader. You have to be somebody who knows and somebody who is willing to learn. So this is our motive as Read Pakistan. Today the topic is a very interesting one, because I am a literature person. I've done my master's in English literature, and today the topic is literature and humanity. And this is what we're going to talk about today. So, cutting it really short now, I'm going to reach to Dr. Saskia. Hello, doctor. How are you today?
Yes, hello. I'm very honored to be part of your program, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yes, me too. Me too. This is going to be really amazing. Unfortunately, last time we missed on due to some issues which were technical, errors occurring. So this time, everybody is going to definitely enjoy this session, and we were all looking forward for this. We were looking forward for it last week as well, but I think it's better than late than never. So I think it's going to be a wonderful session. So Dr. Saskia, as usual, because I'm going to follow a very regular pattern that Read Pakistan follows, and for that, I'm going to ask you the first and most important prior question, which is that how did you develop your connection with books? It's really important for all of us to know, and it's really important for our readers and people, who are watching us at the same time, that, how did you develop a connection with books? How did you do it?
Yes. Well, I have always been a passionate reader, even as a child, and this has two reasons. First of all, my grandfather, my late grandfather, he owned a bookstore, and was a very well-known bookstore in the village where he lived. And I remember as a child that I enjoyed so much going to his bookstore and surrounding myself with the books, and also reading the books that, of course, depending on my age. So that's one. You could say that I was, my grandfather played a very important role in this respect. But also as a child, I was always a child that woke up really early. When everybody was still sleeping, I was reading. I was reading all kinds of books. I loved, as a small child, I loved the books of Agatha Christie. And I was really quite small. And I read all of the books of Agatha Christie.
Wow.
Yeah. So somehow I've always, it has really always played a very important role in my life, because what I love is stories is basically what life is about. Life is about stories, and that's why I love reading. Yeah.
That's amazing. So basically, you started as a person who had a lot of imagination and wanted to, so wanted to have a lot of stories around you. And I think that's so true. I've spoken with a lot of people, and the most wonderful part is that I feel that either their parents or their grandparents have actually played a very pivotal or vital role in their life for building them to be readers, which unfortunately is not the case for non-readers. And it becomes, at the end of the day, it becomes so important that there should be people around you, books around you. So amazingly, you've grown up to be a person, but you were a child who was surrounded with books. So this is amazing. This is amazing, definitely. So what do you think? What kind of books did actually, made a very, say, for instance, deep impact of their, they have an influence on your personality? What kind of books? Maybe you can just talk about genres.
Yeah, well, I think because it was not only part of my, let's say, private family life, but I also, at the schools I went to, literature was a very important topic. I was born in Holland, but I grew up in Latin America and South America, and I always went to English schools, and literature was a very important topic. And I was fascinated by the books of Jane Austen. And why was I fascinated by the books of Jane Austen? She somehow could write in a way very detailed, very vividly about people, just people of flesh and blood. And she described the scenery, the way they lived, and I was fascinated by that. So these are the books that I really enjoyed reading, trying to picture that world, which is, of course, another world 200 years ago or 100 years ago. And it was, for me, yeah, I was fascinated by the way that she wrote about, and I think this inspired me later, about people, about real people.
Wow.
Yeah,
No, that's I think I read Jane Austen back, this about 15 years back,
yeah,
and I think I really enjoyed reading her, even though she talks about very, she gets into details, and a lot of them. So yeah, it was quite difficult for me to actually initially, that it was very difficult for me to grapple onto a lot of things. But then I realized that Jane Austen is a wonderful writer. I mean, and also the Bronte sisters. I mean, everything
yeah,
has been well
yeah,
connected. But yeah, so I read initially. I remember Pride and Prejudice of Jane Austen,
yeah,
and it's like one of those books which really, when you're a young person, I think
yeah,
that kind of thing would really intrigue you, or maybe you would be sort of fascinated. But about the detailing, definitely she was wonderful. And
yeah.
so doctor, tell me more about this book that you're writing, and then we can move on to literature and humanity. But before that, let's talk about your book, the impact of, maybe the
A
impact,
book
but
of peace building.
yes, but yeah, the peace building, and how it is impacting our society, or maybe it hasn't started yet, but how you visualized it to be impacting our society.
Well, I realized that the red thread in my life has always been, um, I would say, fighting for social justice. And that has always somehow been important for me, and not, not the very big things in the political sense, but always social justice for people. And I remember it started with me as a small child. As I said, I grew up in South America, which at that time was a lot of poverty. And so, and already as a child, I was very aware of, for instance, inequality in society. And so this has been very defining in my life and my life choices. And I see the book on peace building as, you could say, the culmination of everything that I've done so far. And what is so very characteristic about the way we approach, or I approach, peace building is that I also boil it down to us, people, becoming peace builders. So not something abstract like institutions or politics, but we can all become peace builders. That's the main message. It starts with us. If we, in our day-to-day life, take the trouble and make it a habit, you could say, to, with small acts of kindness, influence or impact someone's life, we are building peace.
Yes.
And if we spread that, it's can you catalyze change if other people start doing that, and it's creating waves, you could say. And
Yes.
so yeah, so the approach is built on this idea again of us, and this also has to do with my work as a human rights defender, because in the last 10 years, I've heard so much about the impact of war on people and of conflict and of political oppression, that I thought it's always so abstract. You talk about geopolitical relations, but I think, but this is about people. War is about people, how it
Yes.
impacts their lives. So the book on peace building is, I dare say, a very unique approach that we have developed, bringing it down to what can we as individuals do, and combination with a very business-like approach. So what we say is, let's make an economy of peace, because war is an industry. It's a very big industry involving a lot of money. Why wouldn't we replace that by an economy of peace, so that we get
Yes.
rid of all these conflicts? That's the main
that
message.
that's that's a wonderful idea. So you're actually building onto something which people, I would say that you have taken a maiden flight, because I don't see a lot of counterparts for war, and there is war everywhere. That unfortunately we have fallen into that time zone, or maybe even, I think it's with humanity. It's not the time zone or anything, but if we say about travel 50, 60, 70 years back, we will fall into that area where there was world wars going on, there were revolutions coming in. So the French Revolution and the British Revolution, and then there was time, then there were the wars, where there were the World War I and II and so
Yeah,
on. So
yeah,
yes, we have always faced this difficulty, but even through
yeah,
those times, there has been no League of People who were actually talking of peace. Yes, we see scattered, scattered energy of positivity, but we don't see one school of thought really talking about. Because there's always been a school of thought talking about war, but then there hasn't been a counterpart talking about peace at the same time.
well, the interesting thing is that we have come to justify that we use violence against violence, which
Yes,
is really weird. I would
yes,
say,
because that's
if you
not the
want,
answer.
yeah, if you want to undo violence, you have to break the cycle of violence, and it's much more difficult. And then you have to tap into your empathy, your respect, your integrity, and that's the challenge, because it's
Yes.
so easy to say, you know what, I'm gonna use war, I'm going to use violence to try to oppress the other. This has become the narrative. Well, we say no, let's change the narrative.
That's propagate. I mean, talking about this, I'm not trying to propagate, but Japan has really worked onto these things. If we work on those areas where there was, so they came up with very nice peace treaties and so on, and also that they have really worked upon in their next generation. They have instilled that they have done a lot of work with peace and peace movements and everything. So yes, this is very important. I think one of the most important things is how we deal with our war, war going on around us, and how we're going to sort of give out not a negative repercussion, but a positive ramification for the same. So I think it's really important. Do you think that you are getting criticism on your book, Dr. Saskia?
Well, so far, not criticism, but people
Okay.
say that's very ambitious if you want to create an economy of peace. And I say,
Yeah.
yes, it's an ambitious plan, but it's time we do it. Because just to give you an indication, we're spending more than $2.5 trillion yearly on war. Seriously? Well, it only destroys. And this is not the cost of war. The cost of war is more than 13
Yeah.
trillion because it
Yes.
destroys everything. And then you have to rebuild it. And
Built
not to
it.
think about the impact on people. It destroys lives. So I say, yeah, if we are able to do that, why wouldn't we be able to create an economy of peace? So yes,
That's
it's
wonderful.
ambitious, but I absolutely believe in the urgency, the necessity, and I feel that the way that people are responding to us, they say, yes, we really have to do it. It's enough. Because on top of all these wars, we also have COVID now.
Yeah.
COVID, which has bring to light the inequality in the world. So it's time for change, really fundamental change. And I think
Wonderful.
literature can play a key role in this respect.
uh, Doctor, what do you think? As in your book, how you have, I'm just going to put it, say, for instance, you might just be able to put it in a gist, how you can say about three factors or three steps or three things that you would suggest for promoting an economy, a peace economy. So that even people should become really inquisitive about reading your
Yeah,
book as well, but at the
yeah,
same time they should have the idea what the book is running around. So
yeah,
how about explaining it in, say, about three pointers
yeah,
maybe?
yeah. Well, first of all, we say it starts, as I say, it starts with us. So, and it revolves around values. And there are for us four key values, that is trust, empathy, integrity, and respect. This is the four. With those four values, you have to use them to break the cycle of violence. And in order to do that, we go through different stages. How can you become a peace builder? Yes, you have the values. First, you have to develop a thorough understanding of who you are and what roots you, because this is what gives you strength. Many people, they are not sufficiently aware of what they're capable of. We say, you are the hero in your life journey. You are a hero. And start thinking of yourself as a hero. Instead of I'm an engineer or I'm a doctor, you are the one in charge of your life. So if you develop this thorough self-awareness, then you can start working with your community. So we don't have a top-down approach, we have a bottom-up approach. You surround yourself with people that are going to spread that same message and are going to work on peace. That's the second step. And once you have created your tribe, your community, then only you can start advocating for peace, start trying to influence policy, creating a social fabric which hinges on peace. So it's a bottom-up approach. This is the core of it.
That's wonderful. I'm sorry, my eyes keep on shifting from here and there. I keep telling people who are with us, I mean the speakers, I keep telling them that there are other messages popping up. So
I
I'm
see
going to
them,
show
yeah.
this one message. Actually, it's a question. I'm going to show it on the screen just a second. So we have Amir Khan, and he's saying, "Who will decide and who will change the narrative? Isn't it an imperialistic approach?"
Yes,
So, Doctor, that's a question
yes.
for you.
Yes, it is at the moment. But I always say, if you want to realize change, it's all about numbers. It's about critical mass. And we have to be aware about the fact that usually in society, 80% of people follow. Politicians know this. But if you flip the coin and you say, but wait a minute, we are going to create a new narrative, we can use the same mechanism. We get that 80% that is going to also share that story with us. And once you have critical mass, you silence this imperialistic approach. This is why the power of the individual is so strong, and we are not using it sufficiently. We think we are powerless, we are not. It was a very beautiful saying of Mandela. He said, our biggest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our biggest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. And we should start believing in it. We
Okay.
are. So that's my answer.
That's wonderful. That's very nicely taken and very nicely answered. We have Armaghan Zulfikar saying hello, and he's showing a thumbs up sign. Amir Khan is waving to us, and then we have Shafiq Ahmed. He's also saying hi. Basically, these all messages are for you, Doctor. We have Javeria. I'm going to just show Javeria Asad's comment here. She says you are using literature as the social product to talk about peace, and this is an amazing effort. So this is actually a comment. It's a very nice
Thank you.
positive comment.
Thank
But at the
you.
same time, Javeria is asking a question as well. She says how you can suggest writers to follow the same ideology.
It depends, of course, also on your own interest and the topic. But just to, as an example, so I was very involved at that time with the Syrian war,
Okay.
as a human rights defender. But I'm also teaching and I'm also a writer. And so I had been asked to teach Syrians, it was in 2014. And afterwards, I asked myself that same question, how can I raise attention about this very complicated topic? Let's be honest, a very complex war. And this is where I said, you know what? I'm going to tell a story through 7 people that I met.
Okay.
The story of the Syrian war through the eyes of 7 different people. And this was my book on, which I called Stay or Leave. And the moment that you bring it down to people of flesh and blood, people can also relate to it. You reach a point when you hear about all this injustice that you become indifferent because you feel like, what can I do about it? But the moment that you can relate to people, you feel, but wait a minute, I can do something. You can do something for that person, and that person can also do something for that person. And this is how you create this, you multiply in a sense, the impact that you're making. So it's always taking the angle of the individual and how as an individual you're trying to, without always us being aware, you're doing things which make an impact in someone's life. And we all do that, but we are not aware of it. And we are not aware of the power it holds in it.
Yeah, I think this is wonderful because when we talk about, you're completely right. If we can make an impact, I think the power of one should even not be ignored. I mean, there is, each one of us holds significant power, and we can bring in change. And I think that should be the focus point for us. We have another person who is putting up a question. Let me just show it to you. It's Kainat Mubarak here. How much goal setting is important in student life, and how can we relate it to our aims? Okay, it's
Well,
quite this kind
yeah,
of.
that's a very interesting question. I
Mhm.
always say you have to be careful with goal setting. And why do I say that? Especially, when you're a student, and because before you know it, you're only focused on reaching the goal. And you forget that while you are trying to reach the goal, all kinds of things happen. So I say, I compare it to it's related to a poem that I'm very fond of. It's the poem of Ithaca, and it says basically that the journey is as important as the goal, and
Yes.
in a sense, we should give more attention to the journey, and we should be open that our goals can change as we are going. So be careful with goal setting. And another element which is very important and which is also very much part of the last book, but also the way I write, I compare ourselves to trees. We are like a tree. We are a tree of life. Why is a tree such a beautiful metaphor? Because a tree is rooted and we are rooted. And what's important, trees are very strong. They can hold on to all kinds of circumstances.
Yes.
And so if we see ourselves as trees, and trees transform, and trees change, and trees have flowers and fruits. And so if we see ourselves as a tree, then in a sense, the goal setting becomes a little bit less important, because we know that we will transform, we will change, we will do things, we will influence lives. And goals is just, I would say, a point on the horizon that can give you some guidance, but don't narrow your vision down to the goal, because then you forget what's happening around you.
That's so true, because I think the most important thing that you said is that our goals might just change. So
Yeah.
yes, it's very important. Like, I remember, I mean, I'm going to connect this with the research paper that I was writing in my MPhil. And I remember that I started off with one topic and ended up with somewhat like the same, but it was quite different. So, you keep on narrowing it down. Sometimes you keep on expanding it a lot. And I think this is what happens when we set up a goal. It's the same thing, because then we're reaching out to a target, and even the goal transforms itself into something else. And like, even I'll talk about Read Pakistan. Initially, when we started, we wanted to just simply go for the inculcation of reading habit in the community. But then we realized, when we did our research, at the end of the day, we realized that, oh my god, I mean, we don't even have libraries. How are we taking it up that we're telling people to read books when they don't even have books? So
Yeah.
then that became a part and parcel of what we were actually doing. So I think that's very much realistic. It's very much to the ground. It's very much real, alive. And we should be careful about our goals. So cannot I think goal setting is important, of course, in students'
Of course,
life.
of
And
course.
definitely, but you should never be to stay optimistic, but at the same time, you should be knowing that it can change anytime, and of course it can alter a bit to an extent. So now, doctor, let's talk about literature and humanity. And let's talk about how literature and humanity have really impacted our past, and how it can influence the present, because this is our topic today. And I think we should correlate it with the future as well, to an extent, that how it can influence or impact the coming future as well. So what do you think, literature and humanity, how they are so linked up, how they're so connected, juxtaposed? So what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I had to think, about the topic, what is important for me in literature, and after having read so many books throughout my life, and also what is humanity. For me, humanity has to do really with the fact that if you look at the world, we spend so much time, and we have somehow come to see progress in terms of technological development, accumulation of wealth, progress, that somehow we have forgotten that the world revolves around humanity, and humanity, not only us as species, but also nature and animals. This is the essence of world. The other things are means to support us, but the essence is not technology. The essence is not artificial intelligence or robots. We are kind of the core. And I think what literature teaches us, and of course, there are many books which already have written about this. I was now this morning reading again about the process of Kafka, that he wrote about this, in a sense, very briefly. He tells the story of how you as an individual can get crushed in social structures in a system, because somehow the system, has its own course, and it has nothing to do with you as an individual. This is key. This is a very important story in literature. And this is key. This is what has happened, that we somehow, humanity has become lost in the narrative, in media, and in society. And this is where literature is really important, because it tells stories. It tells stories about things that are not going well. It tells stories about people. It tells stories that give hope. And this is why it's so important. And I think that to more with more emphasis, we should highlight this role of literature. In a sense, I think it's so important what you're doing, because we've lost somehow sight of what the role of stories is in our lives. You know, in the past, history was passed on through stories. This is
Yeah.
how threads were woven between generations. This is what kept communities together, families together. This is how you solved conflicts, because even in peace building, you have peace circles. It's all stories and people. So we have to, I think, reinforce this notion that of the importance of stories and literature, as opposed to putting everything on technology, COVID, as if our whole life now only revolves around COVID. Seriously? This is not realistic.
Yes, nothing should become the epic of everything. We have a very nice commenter, which is very brief. I'm going to show it. Liba says, "Wow, this
Thank
is not."
you.
So we have another question. It's Ahmad. I think Ahmad Ansari. So he says, since life has frequent ups and downs, and the due to some unexpected circumstances, if someone is not able to achieve the goals, what they should do.
Yeah, I always say we somehow have to deal with what life throws at us. And that can be a challenge, because and what you have to then do, and this is why I really love and very strongly believe in this concept of the tree of life. I also have my own tree. And because if we see ourselves as a tree, and we translate that in what are our values, what gives us strength, what did we learn, who are the people that are supporting us. Oh, wait. I have to quickly. Who are the people that are important for us to grow, to show our uniqueness? You know, then we are able to deal with the many challenges that life throws at us. But you have to start with inner strength, and not with, because otherwise you're always reacting to what happens around you, and this makes you powerless. Oh my God, what do I do now? And this is
Yes.
what I see happening now with Corona. You know, you see, oh my God, this pandemic. What we have inner strength. Corona is nothing compared to wars and tsunamis and I don't know what. It's something very minor, and we can deal with it. But
I
somehow
think that
we don't believe in it. So this is
that's
my answer. If you
positivity.
start from inner strength, then you can face any challenge. And I've faced many in my life, I can tell you.
Oh, then I think Imam must be really interested in hearing to one or two of your very, those kind of events, which actually were supposed to be very horrific, but then you sort of turned them around and you made them easier for yourself and for your life. How about just telling us one or two so that,
Okay, I
he
will tell you, this has been a very defining moment. And, you know, I don't like to be dramatic, but it was my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer. I had a massive burnout, very severe. I had a depression. And on top of that, I had the Q fever. And the Q fever is something which, especially here in Holland, it comes from goats. And it's a virus for there is no cure. So I had a cocktail, you could say, that was terrible.
terrible.
And I remember that because I was really very, very ill. And this is the moment that I thought, okay, you know, I have two choices. I can give up or I can fight back. And I remember that I was at the hospital and I could hardly move because I was very ill. And I thought, I'm not going to give up because I have still so much to do in this life. And I started fighting back. And I remember that I really was very weak also. And that the nurse said to me, you are very impatient. but this is what's going to save you. And at that time, I didn't believe her. I thought, oh my God, it's such a battle with myself. I wanted to kind of also give up because I was all these things together. And I had two things that kept me going. So you have to find that. It's a very short story. But in that period, because I also had a severe depression, everything is black in a depression. You don't want to do anything. But I had this kind of rational decision. I want to keep going. And I took up a photography. I said, I'm going to take photography. And the first thing that I photographed was a duck swimming in a pond nearby my house. And what struck me of the duck was that it was swimming between those very small green leaflets. So it was just a duck, the water, and all these little green leaves. And it struck my attention. And I printed the picture. And then I realized I see color again. It's not all black. And this is what kind of pulled me also. I started looking for the things around me which caught my attention, and I started to capture them, and I made books. So in the days that I was really feeling like, oh my God, I had those books to look at, and I thought, oh, wait a minute. It's not all black, because I did see those things.
Wow, that's actually very beautiful. I mean, it's
Yeah.
really beautiful. I mean, wow, it's amazing, and I think it's true for everybody, not just for Imad. I mean, of course, it's a question from his side, but I think it's true for each one of us. We go through patches which are unbearable, but then we keep on, just pulling ourselves out of that. And empathy you talked about, I know exactly how you feel. It's not really empathy, because I know exactly how you feel. Well, my mother had the same, didn't she didn't have the same cancer, but she had cancer. So I know exactly when it is diagnosed how you feel and how you put up with that fight. And then if you have your own issues, you fall into that depression zone, and how you want to pull yourself out of that. I think this comes with each one of us, and each one of life's package. I think it's part of us.
What's
Yes,
important,
we
because
have to look at
maybe,
both colors.
everybody see it as a phase always.
Yes,
It's really important. Don't think, oh, this is going to be like that, and never ever give up.
yes,
Ever.
ever. Yeah.
My
Oh,
lesson.
that's determination and a lot of it. I think, Imad, you're going to make use of a lot of that. Ever. So we have another
Always
question
call me,
here.
call me.
So we have another. Okay, Kainat is also saying that, as I'm a medical student, so how can I manage time to read books other than the field? Oh, I would like to answer that, Kainat, and how books and humanity are interconnected. Well, Doctor, go ahead. You can answer both of them if you wish, and I'm going to suggest a few things for her as well. But I'm going to do that later. Please go ahead. She says that I'm a medical student. Of course, she doesn't get time. Medical students, they read a lot, but they're just related with their own fields, and how books and humanity are interconnected. So that's completely your thing.
I think we often also approach reading as a project. I have to read that book and I have to finish it within a week.
Yeah.
Don't do that. A book is not a project. Just enjoy the reading, even if it takes you 3 weeks. I'm sure that you can find time to 5 or 10 pages a day. That's fine. So yeah, I think that's very important. Don't approach it as a project or as a goal. And how are they interconnected? I explained that earlier. It's always literature is stories about real people, and people, yeah, what life is about. And this is something that we all experience in different ways. And if we read, we also get to know other people's lives. And this makes us better humans, I think. Because the moment that we can distance ourselves from our own small world and we can relate to the world of others, this is also what we are feeding ourselves. We're teaching ourselves to become human.
Yes. Yeah, that's wonderful. Humanity is one thing that we need to learn, and we can't do it without getting other people's experiences, without listening to their stories, without letting them in our lives. I mean, even through reading or even through just listening to them, and how the stories, like you said, doctor, in the beginning, that how things have come from one generation to the other. And there were times when there were no books, or there were no reading materials as per se, as in they were available, yes, but then there were things that were transformed from one chest to the other. So I think those were the kind of things, the information, or even see, if you read about medical, because you're studying medical. Kainat is the person who's listening to us, Kainat Mubarak. She's a medical student. So how people used to do in old times was that they would just transform their knowledge, they would transfer it to the next generation, to their son or somebody who's related, and they would let them practice with them. And that's how all the medicine has come down. Now we have books and we have so much to
Yeah.
carry. One thing that I really want to add, Kainat, is that whenever you read, please, just take it as something which is important, is something not just for the sake of reading, but for something which is something indispensable in life. As in, people take it as luxury, that, oh, if I get time, then I would read. I think that it's most important to read and then to move forward, because even for a knowledge economy, it's important. Even for your personal grooming, it's important. Even for you earning 4 times more than a normal individual, it is important for you to read. So yes, you are reading for your profession's sake, but I think sparing 10 minutes or 15 minutes out of your daily very busy schedule is not going to be a trouble. You need to know how the world is going around, how people from the past have made their way through, how autobiographies make a difference, how
Yeah.
travel guides make you travel the world even if you haven't traveled
Yeah.
at all. And
Exactly.
yes, so many important things. So yeah, when I say that reading is important, please take it as something like food and drink. Like Imam Ghazali did not eat or drink for 3 days because he had the kind of money which he could only spend either on food or for book. So he bought a book and
If I can
stayed
tell you,
hungry.
yeah, if I can tell you one story, because I say I
Yes,
was very involved with Syrians, but in war you cannot buy books. So what
of
people did, there was one book. It's called, I think, The Shell or something. It was photocopied, and people just spread it around because I asked that. Everybody has read that book, but it was just by photocopied because there were no books, and it was not allowed also by the government, and they just shared them with each other. So
See, it's not a luxury. It's something like just breathing, or something that you need to eat, or like we realize that we're hungry. Our spirits are hungry for knowledge, and we should not
absolutely.
be just we just not be neglecting that aspect of our life. So okay, so we have Mustafa. Just a second. Mustafa Hussein is asking that the environment that makes you unwell.
I'm
I
not sure
mean,
I understand that question.
yes. Okay, Mustafa, I would just request you to put up either a question which is, so full. I understand that you're saying that the environment makes you unwell, but at the same time, I think it would be all the more important if you have some question, please put it forward so that Dr. Saskia can reply you back in detail. So moving back, Dr. Saskia, to our topic actually.
Yeah.
So what do you think that literature and humanity, they had, of course they have left an impact, but the impact, what do you think of future? We've talked about present, we've talked about past. What do you think in the coming, say, about a decade or maybe two? Where do you see literature? Do you think that it's going to get deteriorated, or do you think that it's just going to stay around, or do you think that it's going to have more impact and more influence for the people? Because what I have studied and how research says that usually what's going to happen is that the coming century is going to be of mind sciences, which is it's really important. When it comes to mind sciences, we understand that it's not going to be robotics. It's not going to be something mechanical. It's not technology that we're going to be accompanied by. Rather, we will be accompanied by our own minds or our intellect, or something which is larger than life. And I think this is like sort of driving back to literature and so on. But I think at the same time, it's drawing more attention to our inner selves. So what do you think? Where do you see it? I mean, I have my ideas, but
Yeah,
yes,
of
yes,
course. I think social media has had a huge impact also on the reading habits of people, and especially the young generation, because you have, of course, other means to also inform yourself through, for instance, YouTube, and also other everything that you can get through social media. But the thing is that it's all very superficial. So reading requires you also to take the time to go more in depth into a story. And I think, yeah, this is, I would say, one of the downsides also of social media, that it has made us a bit lazy, because it just comes to us, we just press on a button and we can see a documentary, or we can even podcasts. I'm not against podcasts, absolutely not. But reading, in a sense, requires you to, it's a different way of going on a journey with the writer and the story that he or she wants to write, and that he wants to, he's trying to entice you to embark on this journey through the story that he has written. And I think it's so much richer than the rather, yeah, one dimensional stories that you get through social media. And I think in education, we should spend much more time on that. Also, to emphasize the importance of, because what literature does, it approaches life in all its complexity, and also the fact that it's multi-layered. It's not one thing. So it's not one dimensional. It's 3 or 4D. And this also requires, as I said, an effort. Sometimes before you read, you have to get through it in the beginning, and then finally you're in the story. But then the reward is so big, because once you're in the story, you cannot stop reading. But we have become a bit lazy, and that's really, if I think about the books that made an impact on me, and many have made an impact, it's always these stories that show so vividly what it can be. Anything. I can give you just one example. I remember that so vividly. It's long ago. You had a very famous Italian journalist, Oriana Fallaci. She wrote several books. But
yes,
one of the books, it wasn't a very thick book, many pages. She was really a very renowned journalist at her time, very daring, very. She wrote a book about her unborn child, and she titled the book "A Diary to My Unborn Child," because she lost a child. And this book always is with me, always, because she so vividly described what sadness is, how to deal with sadness, what it means to have a child in your womb, the feelings that how to connect with that child. So yes, you can read about how to do a book, when you're pregnant. But if you read this book, you really understand, what it really means. And this is why literature is so important.
oh, that's so true. Literature is really important. It's you're so right about this, because I mean it has its own impact. It has its own. But I remember this one time that when I was really deciding for my future, of course, when I was studying, and I wanted to be a doctor, and I discussed it with my father, and he said, that's a very nice thing to be in life. And I said, yes, it's nice, because then I can serve humanity and do this and that, and of course it's important. And he said, okay, it's, of course it's important, but then it's more important to be a lady of letters rather than being a doctor. I said, no, really? And he was like, it's important to look inside what's going on inside a human body. But don't you think, Fatima, that it's more important to look outside and know how the world is moving, how the world is evolving, how trees grow, how nature reflects itself on humanity? I know it's important that you become a medical officer, or a doctor, or somebody of some badge, but I think it's more important to be human. It's more important to stay connected with nature, to become somebody that you can feel satisfied with or be proud of. And at that time I
Can I
said,
say something now? What a beautiful story. And this is what you're now doing, is making an impact on someone's life with your story. You are touching lives already. This is how peace works.
yeah, yeah, this is wonderful. And I could not really, doctor, I could not understand that at that time. I mean, of course, I was having my own whims and wishes, and but then I said no, because he's more experienced, he knows better about life. It's okay, maybe I can get a degree later. Of course, I turned out to be a lawyer, which was completely apart from what I was thinking of. But this is about goals. You set one goal and you turn out to be somebody else.
Yeah.
And even when I became a lawyer, I realized that no, I'm a person who wants to stay to the tender side of life. And that was more important for me. I mean, it was more important for me to be, and it was never important how the money was coming in, or maybe, of course, the source is important, that you should not be earning
All right.
from a,
Yeah.
but and money kept on coming. My father also used to say that don't worry about money and don't worry about debt, because both of them will find you. For you to find, there are other things.
What a wise man. What a wise
And
man.
yes, alhamdulillah. But he would just say, don't worry about money, it'll come your way. Be yourself and be somebody of significance, and money will come your way. And don't worry about debt, it will come in time as well. So two things, because I see that in our society, you must be experiencing more or less the same, but doctor, in our society, two most important things is, one is money, and the other one is, oh, I should be safe, I should not die. And of course it's important to be safe, but I think worrying about death is
Yeah.
is it's gonna come.
What
So
a waste
yeah,
of time. We're going to
yeah,
die
we
anyway.
want
So
to-
if it's our
yeah.
time, it's our time. So why worry about it?
Yeah, so he would say, just don't worry about these two things, and your life is going to go all perfect. Don't worry about anything. Yeah, it's like, okay. And I took his advice, because I was completely in love with him. He was an amazing person. And so I took his advice, and here I am. I see that if I was a doctor, yes, I would have made a difference. But today I'm making a difference. Alhamdulillah. In more, in if I calculate it in numbers, I think I'm making somewhat a comparatively better difference in the number of humanity, rather than I would have been able to
What a
make.
beautiful story.
Yeah,
Beautiful
so
story.
yeah, so more or less it's the same thing. So one message, doctor, that you want to give to the youth, regarding reading, regarding humanity, regarding literature, and regarding peace, because these four things, I think today, if I sort out a crux for today's conversation, I would say that these four things are what we have, simply gisted upon. So, how about you give out a message for the youth, for the people out there, and let them know what it really means, and how much it matters.
Yeah, I think what's for youth is also important is to understand the power of stories, and so they are now also, you could say, very important to create our societies, because they hold the future. Youth hold the future, and it's so important that they share their stories also with us, of the things that preoccupy them, the things that they are facing. Because this is what I discover. I work with so many young people, and I always ask them to make the tree of life. And they always say, wow, it is amazing what I discovered about myself, about my family, about my friends, about, I said, yeah, this is you. So if you're in awe about your tree, you're in awe about yourself. So I think if they start sharing those stories, then also they are, you could say, forming the fabric of the future, the future that is emerging. So I would like them to, and to read much more, but also share their stories much more. And I think the consciousness of young people about humanity is very big, to be honest, very big. And I think that's, for me, very hopeful, because I have two children. I have a son of 26 and a daughter of 23. They are so conscious about, for instance, the environment. My daughter is teaching me what it means to be, aware of the importance of the environment. And I'm so proud of her. And she's not the only one. And my son is acutely aware of everything that's happening in the world, and he's using philosophy to try to, he said to me, I started to read about philosophers because I thought I was going crazy because I didn't understand the world. I thought, wow, this is amazing. And now he has set up a platform on Instagram. He has 20,000 followers. Can you imagine? And he's just writing things that he values about all the philosophies he's reading about. And he was using it to kind of prove to himself that he was not crazy. So I
That's
thought, wow,
amazing.
yeah. So I say the youth hold the future and hold the potential. They should step out and just take the lead in telling their stories, sharing their stories, writing their stories, and not be shy about it. And reading also stories of others to be inspired.
That's so true. I think this is wonderful because I see around myself as well how many amazing people they come and they share your story, and then you learn so much out of that. And I think that youth has that potential that they can make a difference because they have the right kind of energy, they have the right kind
Exactly.
of time
Yeah,
with them,
yeah.
and it's just simply superb. Dr. Saskia, so much thankful for your time that you have spared today, and I'm so grateful that you could just figure out that we can you talk about certain things which are of very very grave importance, and it's very important that we talk about them today so that we can polish them tomorrow. Thanks a lot for your time. For the people who joined us later, and we're going to watch this, of course, because they're going to watch it from the beginning. Today our guest, our honorable guest, was Dr. Saskia Harkema, and as I said in the beginning, that she has a personality with a background of sociology and business administration. However, being a doctor in social sciences, she has really worked her way out on humanity. She is a multifaceted personality, because she has worked, for different fields in life. She has an aura which is amazing, and you must be noticing it all through this past 1 hour that we were talking and having this conversation, that she is not just an academic person, but she's also somebody who knows and realizes the human rights, and she's a defender as well, of course, because as I introduced her in the beginning, that she's an international leader of Impact Leaders International, global ambassador for Female Wave of Change, and also a senior expert for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, that actually mingles it up in a very precise manner, and makes us realize that how one person can be so strong to be bringing up the best in human capability, and for her as a person, how she has delivered to so many fields of life. And it's impressive, it's excellent, it's a lot of passion that you require for turning out to be a person like her. And not just that, we also talked about her book, which was about peace building, and how she thinks that a peace economy can come into being in counterpart to the world of war, and how we can make peace a part of our lives. And we talked about that as well. It is sheer passion. It was a sheer pleasure to talk
Yes,
to you as well.
absolutely.
Yes, and I think I read out a couple of comments and questions as well. And I think most of us are going to agree, Dr. Saskia, that you should be coming and giving us more time later, whenever it is more feasible for you. And we should talk about something else as well. And we were really honored. I personally am
Yes,
really honored.
yes. It
I
was
think
a pleasure to talk to you.
yes, I'm really, really amazed how in a challenging way, how in such a befitting manner you are able to return back to society. For me, this was most important, that what we have learned and what we have gained from society, I should be returning it back. For people like you, when I meet, people like you who have met you, I mean, online, of course, I think this is the most astonishing part of one's personality, how you can realize that you have that valor and you have that power to actually stand up and be there for humanity. So thanks a lot. I mean, humanity is thankful, but I'm thankful as well that you have shared your time with us. Thank you so very much, Doctor.
Yes, thank you so much. And we are all heroes in our life journey. So let's all be heroes.
Sure. Oh, that's a wonderful message at the end. It's the motto of our conversation. Let's be heroes. Thank you very much, and thank you
Yes.
everybody for watching us. Catch you later. Take care. Bye bye.